G'day everyone. I haven't uploaded for a while, so I thought I'd just do a quick video, a bit of a voice video actually, on a topic that I've just been writing about, which is whether social media should be treated as a sort of private public utility. So there's quite a few issues to that, and I've written quite a long article, which you can find at my blog on ThoughtThroughMyEyes.com.au, entitled "Should Social Media Be treated as a public-private utility?" And so there's a couple of questions around that. One of what do I mean by a private-public utility? So I'm talking about the fact that social media is now pervasive and everywhere. So it's a utility. It's embedded in people's lives. Businesses are depending on social media now. It's a network of transport of information. So I'm saying it's analogous to the actual transport network, for instance, of say rail or road or things like that, that businesses depend on to get their products and services around. Well, now there's a lot of businesses that are in the digital or virtual marketplace that are relying on social media and access to social media to to do commerce. So in that sense, the platforms are a utility. There's also the issue around whether the social media is a platform or a publisher, and sometimes the platforms themselves come down on different sides of that argument. Sometimes they if they want to be heavy-handed about what they want to censor and what they want to allow on the platform, they'll say that they're a publisher and that they have the rights to curate the content. And on the other side, if they're in danger of a defamation action or being sued by someone, then they'll put their hands up and say, well, we're a publisher, we don't control what our users say. And then, of course, there's the whole questions around the terms of reference, terms of service, sorry, that the social media platforms have. So those terms of service are developed by the management. They're not consulted with their vast user base. They're basically just thought up by the management, and they align with the particular preferences of the management group in terms of what's allowable content and what violates terms of service and things like that. And even for the social media companies that are publicly traded companies, they don't consult with their shareholder base to develop what those terms of reference are. It's a management issue. Whilst the shareholding has certain rights in terms of the running of that company, they don't get down into the nitty-gritty of what the terms of service might say. So whilst they might appear or position themselves as being very democratic and egalitarian and an open platform, it is actually very controlled, and the management really have the final say on what the terms of service are, on what gets blocked and what doesn't get blocked. Now, this becomes a bit of an issue because there's no real transparency here. What can happen is a particular publisher can be putting out information on a channel that the platform provider decides is against their terms of service, and they simply block that provider. That's happened quite a bit lately. And all this has been in the news lately as well, with the New Zealand massacre, about what scope a social media platform should have to regulate the content that's on there. But this issue about what they block and what they allow, and the personal preferences of the management in terms of what they might find to be acceptable content, they might find particular views, even though those views are completely lawful and not necessarily hateful. The management might find those views odious to their own sort of political outlook, and they'll block those views. And the real issue there too is that it's a completely opaque process. There's no transparency, there's no right of appeal, there's no way for those publishers to redeem themselves. Once they're blocked, they're out, they're thrown out of the virtual society, if you like. So there's a number of issues there around how social media operates. There's also the issue about the fact that it's a transnational or global problem. So, the largest social media companies are domiciled in the United States, so they, obviously they're subject in terms of their corporate management and everything to the commercial laws there. And in the countries where they operate, they're subject to whatever laws that might be there. But basically, there's not going to be a situation where governments can step in, and we wouldn't want that anyway, but there's not going to be a situation where governments can step in and regulate those companies at a global level. It's going to have to be case by case, country by country, and that's going to add compliance costs for those social media platforms, and obviously those costs eventually get passed on to users in one way or another, mainly advertisers and so on, and that'll basically it'll flush through or wash through whatever the business models that are there. Those costs will have to be borne somehow. So there's a number of issues there about how and in which way that social media could be regulated. The main, I guess, thrust of the argument that I'm making is that any regulation by government should be very light. Government shouldn't get involved in determining what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable content and heavily regulating in that area. If government's going to step in at all, it needs to sort of mandate that the platforms are able to be scrutinised, that there's transparency about the way that the terms of service are applied. Certainly the management group will continue to develop the terms of service, and that'll modify over time, but there should be more detail around what constitutes the community of users and what the so-called quote-unquote community finds as acceptable use. It shouldn't be just about the management determining what constitutes acceptable use, and often when they do this they point to some abstract community of users that they talk about, but really they don't really have any consultation with the community of users when they develop those terms of service. They just say that they do. So that's one issue. The depth of the regulation should really be, or the breadth of it, sorry, should really be limited to allowing the equitable access to the platform, so that people that are providing digital products and services have that transport layer there, that it's fair and open to all. It's a bit like the net neutrality issue. Certain types of content shouldn't be sort of throttled just because the positions or the views of that content, as long as they're lawful, are not acceptable to the management of the company. So I cover that in the article, and a number of things around that. Also address some of the objections to the whole concept that social media platforms can be regulated. So there's a number of standard objections that are put forward by people, such as these are private companies, they can do what they like. That's one. It'd be too hard because it's transnational, global. That's two. So there's some other ones as well that I address in the article. So that's in the video description below. If you want to have a read of the article, go ahead. It's over at my blog. And there's a lot of food for thought there. I'd encourage you to talk about this with your friends and get involved if you're really engaged with this issue. And especially if you are a digital content provider, it's something that you really need to keep an eye on what's happening in this space. So that's it for today. Have a great day. Haven't spoken to anyone out there for a while, so hopefully I'll do some more content and some more videos before too long. See you later.